So let me briefly introduce Adam. He grew up in Los Angeles and has a BA in design and marketing from Cal State Northridge. Over a decade of experience in branding, he has worked in full-service advertising agencies, boutique studios, and in-house boutique studios and in-house art director for established and startup companies. And for the past 2 years, Adam has been functioning as an independent freelancer. So welcome, Adam. Hello, are you there? Hello?
Yes, I am here.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam. So I'm handing this over to you. You can take this from here, and I'll be monitoring the question answer. Whenever I have something, I'll just keep track of them. So go ahead.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that you can see the screen.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Excellent. So yes, my name is Adam. This is a Why Branding Matters webinar. Thank you all for participating. A little bit about me. As was just said, I designed in-house for corporations, designed at full service agencies. So I've sort of seen both sides of corporate advertising and also creative services. For about 5 years, I freelanced, and then about a year ago, I decided to bring all that under one roof and build a team. And we're called Project Emerald, and we're located here in Eugene, Oregon. So I guess initially, why should you care about branding even, really? You really want to differentiate your business from competitors. I mean, just as a fairly obvious statement, but your products and services potentially have a limited life cycle. Trends happen, things happen, like this coronavirus, for instance. But brands, your brand is much larger than your product, and brands can last for a really long time. Branding is really about connecting all of your communication touch points together to create a cohesive piece of clarity for your offers. So what is a brand really? Is it a logo? Is it a tagline? Is it the name of your company? Really, it's more than that. It's the vibe of your company. It's the design, language, and storytelling that really all surrounds all of that, bringing it all together. It's much more than a logo. It's really how people perceive your business. And as the famously or infamously popular Jeff Bezos has said, it's really what people say about your company when you're not in the room. It's a cohesive combination of design, language, storytelling, and experience. And together that all evokes a feeling, which is the vibe with your target audience. And really it influences them to engage with your brand and ultimately buy from you. And really, quite honestly, whether you've thought about it or not, if you have a company, even a small company, and you haven't really even started branding, you have a brand. A strong brand is a congruent tone of voice, design, strategy, people, environments, and calls to action and touch points, as well as customer care too. It's really everything all together. And your brand is really a promise to solve a problem. So you really want to be consistent, cohesive, and have clarity within all of it. And like I said, whether or not you thought about it, you do have an actual brand. And so it's really up to you to direct that conversation towards what you want rather than it being perceived by the audience. Nothing is unbranded. So for instance, if you don't create the brand will be created for you. Is that sloppy? Is it inconsistent? Is it confusing? If you don't establish ahead of time what that is, then that will happen for you, for your brand. Are those attributes what you want customers associating with your company? Are those attributes something that would convert sales or hearts and minds if you are a nonprofit or something? And I guess as an example, to nothing being brandless, there's an actual company called Brandless. And despite the white label approach that they have with a direct to consumer approach, shedding the perceived cost of marketing and going through distribution channels with a clean aesthetic. Nevertheless, their minimalistic brand is still a brand. It's a great example of consistent branding as well. What branding is not? It's not just a logo. It's not statements like make it pretty, or my nephew likes frogs, so put frogs in there, or like arbitrary requests like I don't like dark, or I want it to be red, or make it look like Apple. Apple already exists. And that being said, though, really what I'm getting at is that every decision within your brand process should be a very conscious choice, backed by strategy. There should really be a clear reason for everything you do. And taking these as an example, you know, my nephew likes frogs. Well, let's say you're actually targeting, 10-year-olds who like frogs. Then that might be a good direction for you to get some consumer insights. I want it to be red. Is that relevant to your business? Is a wellness company going to be using bold red? Probably not. Make it pretty, or something like that. Is your product or service a delicate product or service? Is it a woman-owned CrossFit company? I mean, debatable, but generally, if you're not a marketing guru, you really don't want to be overly clever and be pretty straightforward with things. But yeah, below the surface really is the larger extent of your brand. The logo is just one piece of a holistic branding structure. And branding really is pulling on emotion too. I mean, car examples are really great because generally they're selling a club that they want you to be a part of, the outdoorsy club or the tough club or whatnot. They're not talking about wheelbase and how long the car is, specs like that. They're really getting you to feel an emotion with it so that you want to be a part of that club. For instance, Beats by Dr. Dre. This is a brand that I would say most of us have heard of, at least. And it's pretty high end, a pretty luxury item, fairly expensive, but the actual specifications and technical prowess of this company is not great. There have been numerous independent studies on audiophonic quality, and Beats by Dre performs on the lower side of things, but the perceived value of this is immense. And I would ask people in the audience, though we're not in person, how much do you think their marketing budget is? $100 million for their advertising budget. You don't have that kind of budget. So how does this apply to your business? What is the small business component of that? What is your desired goal, really? Do you want to shape your client's behavior? Are you looking to change your local community? Are you a nonprofit? Do you know your mission and vision? Who are you targeting? And do you have an ideal customer, like a customer persona or profile? Answering these questions will give you a better idea, really, of what your brand is. And it's really important to start with that stuff. I know a lot of times people want to jump into what the logo looks like, but it's really, really important to have the foundational components of a brand in line so that you can look back to that and really communicate your brand effectively through a very simple communication of one sentence, even, really, that's not even about your product or service. Many new businesses go to market with an idea and not with a brand, and that can be challenging to explain to others. You may think everyone should understand it as you do, but often they don't. So branding is really critical for communicating and connecting your idea with your audience, and the underlying theme of that is really easy communication. Here are some examples of touch points of a brand. And I know this looks overwhelming, and that's sort of the intention of this slide, is that there are a plethora of touch points for a brand. You know, website, obviously, all the social channels, obviously. But depending on what your company does, whether it's a product company or a digital company, or you've got a brick and mortar, the point of this is that through all of these touch points, you really need to have consistency. And it doesn't necessarily even need to be, you have to have a, 10-person team or an on-staff graphic designer to do all this stuff. It's really about using what you have and the free and affordable resources at your disposal to be able to create consistency throughout every application you find. Why is consistency important, really? It's generally regarded as someone needs to see a brand or a logo 7 times before the recognition connection is made. And you're doing yourself a disservice to have an inconsistent brand on the market. And what that essentially means is that every time you create a new advertisement or a new product or a new piece of shareable asset in social, for instance, social media, you don't want to have to re-explain the company every single time you do that. So having a consistent brand people can recognize throughout every single application. For instance, take a look at Apple, right? Apple is a very big company, and no matter what advertising piece they put out to the world, even without their logo on it, we generally can see and know and recognize that that is an Apple product. And I really just briefly wanted to address consistency in the time of what we're dealing with right now with the coronavirus. It may seem somewhat irrelevant, but really uncertainty is at an all-time high. If you can be a beacon of dependability, you're going to create long-term customers for the customers you have now, and also customers who are looking for solutions in the market. And not only that, but how can you adapt to a changing product market while keeping a consistent brand? For example, distilleries now, many of them are transitioning, pivoting their product to being a hand sanitizer company, but they still have brand consistency within their company. They're able to move into a new segment because the market is changing or has changed in this very short instance. And to keep consistency, you can have a brand guideline. In fact, I recommend this highly. And it doesn't even have to be 30, 40, 50 pages. It can be a very simple document, but really what it is it's a consistent representation of all the visual elements that make up your business. You can consider it a brand Bible that can be shared with anyone who will be creating assets for your business. It carries the mission and vision and elements like typography, logo usage, colors, photography, different paragraph styles. And let's say, for instance, you've got a graphic designer that you really like, and you have them build some advertisement pieces for you. Then a year later, you hire another freelance graphic designer to do some more creative pieces for you, let's say for a website or something. Those two different designers have different styles. And so if you don't establish what your brand guideline is, or what your brand looks like to a larger degree, they're going to create different assets that will look different. And even those, excuse me, even though those are professional designers, illustrators, photographers, they're not going to build the same aesthetic for you. And so what you need to have is that brand guideline for them to look at. And so let's go through a couple of examples here. Some examples of non-strategic branding. Now, I don't want to use the word like bad, because that's kind of a judgment word, but a more effective word would be non-strategic, because as I said earlier, really what it's all about is consistency and having a intentional direction with choices that you're making in everything you do for your brand. So some examples of non-strategic branding would be kind of thrown together with minimal thought, the sort of it's good enough, or we don't have the budget, just get it done kind of thing. Another example might be that it is, while visually compelling and pretty, maybe not serving the purpose of the larger brand. So like, let's say something I run into a lot is I'll work with a small business that the owner or founder or someone like that has been with the company for a long time has created an image or took a photo, and they really, really love it. They like feel very emotionally attached to this, and it has made its way into the company as a representative image of the company. But is that a great idea to be just feeling good about an image, liking an image necessarily, but what purpose does it serve within the company? Another example could be that it's professional, but not consistent. And that was an example I just gave as far as having a couple different designers, multiple freelancers working on a project or working on the same company, but different projects. Really, you want to tie that all together. So this example here is a nonprofit that I work with here in Oregon, in Eugene, actually. And it's not bad design. It is professionally designed by both a web company and a designer. But what is limiting is the logo and the name itself. So for instance, the name is limiting because as a company, as an organization that's called Well Mama Oregon, they're limiting themselves to only donors within Oregon. So that's a good segment of the national population of donors potentially that they're already leaving out. So it really has to only be donors from within Oregon. The name also sort of indicates a specificity for a mother organization. And the logo is slightly misrepresentative also. It shows a happy mother picking up her child. You know, what about fathers? What about mothers that have lost an infant? So part of brand decision making is looking back to what the mission and vision is. And their mission and vision is to provide postpartum support for as many people that need it. And then that can include mothers, of course, but it can include fathers and partners. It can include mothers who have lost an infant. So again, while professionally looking, it's maybe not serving the better purposes of the mission and vision for this organization. Some examples of good branding could potentially be, really knowing your target demographic, having that emotional connection with your target demographic, having a consistent style and tone, and that is aligned with your mission and vision. And again, being intentional and purposeful. And ultimately what that means is that with a quick glance, you're able to understand what the organization or business is about. And this is a great example of a rebrand, actually. And rebrands are pretty common, even among large companies. I think we've all seen the Pepsi snafu. But this one in particular, I found to be really awesome and effective for a refresh to bring it to market again. And it really goes deeper into exemplifying the fun and quirky brand of Fisher-Price. And I'd like to take a moment and just kind of go over that briefly. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So Fisher-Price did a rebrand. And it doesn't really look that much different, quite honestly, right? It's still reminiscent of their older brand, but there are key elements here that have been updated. So, for instance, this little smile on the right-hand side, this little smile that indicates, kind of the fun quirkiness of it. we're going down here and we're looking at some of the color palettes. It's sort of the modern take on a lot of clean minimalist design right now is sans serif, which means there's not a lot of these little caps on the ends of typography. But they've chosen to do that because it harkens back to their older brand and logo, and it also has a sense of heritage and legacy with it. They've got some fun animations here that are all part of it, all part of their brand, that really conveys what they're all about. Bouncy, fun, bubbly, and some elements that don't even have their full typographic treatment on it. This awning right here is an element that they're using. And then here's some photography elements that even if you didn't see the logo and you just saw the awning on the top right image, let's say with the water, the child with the water, you would pull it together as a recognizable piece of Fisher-Price. Really great patterns that they're working with. And then their custom typographic family that really gives that feeling of fun and sort of youth to it. And again, elements that are components of the larger brand that help people to gather a feeling, a vibe about the company. So I just wanted to show that as an example. There's this piece right here. I think this is a really good example because it goes through obviously the logo, it goes through their style of font, but it also shows some of the wording and vernacular that they're using, the let's be kids again, or the sun is shining kind of stuff. A lot of these shapes and colors really don't have the logo or the FP in them, but you get a feeling, again, a vibe of what the company is all about. So moving onward, let's talk about some practical, practical applications for branding. Creating a brand, goals, and vision. These are really crucial steps that focus your direction moving forward. Like I said earlier, it's something that we can tend to jump into a little too quickly by wanting to have a logo built. And that's great, but I think starting from a beginning point with really understanding what the company is about, and this is something that you can do even if you have a company currently and maybe you haven't done this. This is not disallowed even though you've got a company currently, but this is a really good step to even refresh. Oftentimes I'll even go back with a company and ask these questions for a company that's been around for 5-10 years, because that helps me understand, and then that helps my understanding affect how I can best serve that company. What are some tactics that you have or that you can implement immediately to get to that vision? Creating a brand, your audience. You really want to take off your shoes. And I don't mean literally your boots here. What I'm talking about is putting yourself in your customer's shoes. In order to connect with your customer, you really need to get into their shoes. You're not marketing to yourself. And I think that's a really challenging part for smaller companies who a lot of times it's a one-person show or one or two people until it takes off. But oftentimes the founder or the CEO or whomever is running the show initially has to do all the things, create the logo or hire someone to do it, build all the story, create some of the vernacular and the verbiage, and really do everything. So oftentimes it's important to look back on the beginnings of things and understand that you're serving another person, you're serving another audience, not your own self and your own personal tastes and taste preferences. You really want to connect with people on that level, because if let's say you really love the color black, but your company is a flower company, then that's certainly not going to work. And oftentimes we have to kind of shed that ego to be able to mostly effectively get to people's emotions. Creating a brand guideline, oftentimes it's not just about what to do, but it's what not to do. And this is, again, really important when we're talking about having multiple people work on a project or several projects for one company. You've got a couple of freelancers, let's say, one's working on a website, one's working on some print ads, another one's working on your social media campaigns. And then also on top of that, you're working with a couple different other businesses to put on an event. And those other businesses need to know how your brand should appear on their material. So like their posters or flyers or their website or their social media pages. So at the end of the day, really what this is doing is it's making your scalability more effective and more efficient, so that you can just present someone with a guideline. Here's a multi-page PDF, and here's what to do, and here's what not to do. Along with that, you can have a folder of some assets, like a logo that's stacked, a logo that's in line, the logo by itself, just the type treatment, on like a Google Drive or something like that, in order to share it with people, so that you don't have to be constantly fielding questions from 5 different people, those 3 freelancers, the other organizations, etc. So a brand guideline is not only for external, but also for internal North Star feelings, where, oftentimes you can get so far into the weeds with your own work, with your own company, it can get a little overwhelming or a little blinding. And maybe you need to look back on something that you've already established and say, oh, that's right. That's what we were going for. That's our mission. That's our vision. And it's there in writing for you to use, again, as a guide, as a guideline, as a Bible of sorts. And then part of that is training people. Getting everyone on board can be challenging, especially if people are in different locations. But it can be staff members, volunteers, freelancers, other organizations. And really what this does is it creates consistency across the platforms. And it makes scaling your business really efficient and effective. And again, like it's all these components all together. And this may be an iterative process, or, several different meetings within your staff in order to get to this point even. And it includes all of these things. It includes identity, it includes the logo itself, some strategy, mission and vision, design elements, perceived value, marketing strategy, all these things. So why does branding matter?
So Adam,
Yes.
Oh, okay. After you go through the summary, we have a question in there. Maybe you would like to check quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Is it? Sure. Let's check that out.
Because you just, since we are talking about this, so.
Sure.
Did you
Yeah.
see?
I can't see the question.
It's under the Q&A tab.
Yeah, I clicked it. It was.
Okay, let me read it out to you.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So it's from, so it says, is it true once you have a well-established brand, you can slightly change a couple of small things slowly and your customers will still know you and what you offer?
Yes. However, I would say you don't want to do that very often. And a really good example of that is how Yahoo had kind of, here, I will pull that up as a great example, actually. Yahoo has gone through like so many versions of a rebrand. Can you see this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In,
Wow.
they've not been around all that long, maybe 10 or so years, and they've got so many different logos to try to reinvent themselves. Um, I think that keeping a logo and the main elements of a company pretty consistent over time is really important. However, having elements of that brand, like let's say gear, for instance, like some swag or whatever that you want to have, I think there are opportunities to explore fresh creative while still maintaining brand consistency. And for the larger brand opportunities, or sorry, for the larger brand itself, I would say, what purpose does it serve to be constantly tweaking the brand? And I would say, in addition to that, you're missing an opportunity. If you're doing constant small tweaks to the larger logo and brand, you're missing an opportunity there. And what I mean by that is a rebrand is a really great opportunity to reintroduce the company to the public. So instead of having these small little tweaks over time, you can have a relaunch, and then that's an opportunity to have new PR, new news pieces, new creative, and it really generates a lot of buzz in that moment. So tweaking it slightly over time, I would generally say not the logo, but elements of the aesthetic or pieces of the creative. You definitely can explore as long as it's kind of within the creative wheelhouse of the aesthetic here. I think there's a couple of other questions actually.
Yeah. Can you
From
see them now?
Stephanie Flores. What are some musts you think should be on a website to ensure you are branding correctly? Let's see here. Musts on a website to ensure you're branding correctly. Well, I mean, I would say every brand and organization is different. So that's a really large question that is, I don't think I could answer generally, but I would, if I had to, I would say in general, you probably want to have an about us, so that you can have a consistent story about your company, so that you can have some kind of timeline which gives a little bit of trust and legacy for your company, to have people understand that you've been around a while, why you started it, stuff like that. Obviously a contact page. And really, again, it really depends on what kind of company you have. So it's really, Stephanie, do you have any more specific questions about that in terms of like what kind of company you're talking about?
Okay, she needs to type here.
Sorry.
So maybe we'll go through this, like if I see something very much relevant to
Sure.
the
Okay.
topic we are talking about, maybe I'll just quickly notify you. Other than that, we'll
Sure. I
discuss.
have the chat up here also, so I have a dual screen monitor
Okay,
here going on.
cool.
And I also see Michelle Piastro. Sorry if I mispronounced that. There are clients who are starting a business that is changing as they develop it. Not knowing the direction of their business is a challenge. Any suggestions as how to brand yet have flexibility to change? That's a great question. Let me just reiterate that, repeat that. There are clients who are starting a business that is changing as they develop it. Not knowing the direction of their business is a challenge. Any suggestions as to how to brand yet have flexibility to change?
That's a
So
fun
what I
question,
would
actually.
say to that is, again, go back to what the mission and vision is. What purpose? Is it a rush to get to market? Is there a timeliness to get to the market, like now kind of thing? What is the rush? I guess would be one of my first questions. What is the constant change? Can we somehow make a brand that is around change? Could that be part of the company itself? And a good example here is MTV, when they first came out, their logo actually was a constant state of change. So depending on what musician they were having their music television, the music video on, it might be, this style. This box right here, the shape of the M, really is conducive to having an infill, so that they could have all kinds of different choices. And really, I mean, the exploration of this company when they first started in the late 80s, it was really all about like bold colors and vividness and, difference and really contrasting values. So this is a great example of how a company can maintain a brand logo, the outline of this, while still maintaining some sense of change within it. So for this company, Michelle, as you're talking about that, I would offer the opportunity to embrace that change while still trying to nail down what the mission and vision is of that. It would help to know kind of what industry they are maybe in. See here. Oh, so Stephanie is saying for her HVAC, it's an HVAC company, and there's not very much info in regards to the work, meaning that every house we go to is different. So trying to call attention to our company. So while each of the houses you may be going to are different, you provide what's the service you're providing is pretty consistent. You are providing HVAC services. Oftentimes I like to help consumers understand process through infographics. And infographics can help people understand the process that you might go through for assessing their house. So like, is step 1 conversation with the client? Is step 2 measuring? Is step 3 understanding the square footage of their house? That could be a really great page actually for this specific kind of company, in that, like, so let's say you've got an about us page, obviously, like I said, you've got a contact page, but you could have like our process page, a page that's specifically like our process. So it helps people to, and I know for myself, actually, I recently had a couple estimates done in my own home for what's that called? A ductless heater unit. And I really want to know what their process is. How do they get to their understanding of what product I should purchase from them? If they're just telling me, I don't feel as comfortable or confident in what they're telling me as if I were to see it on their page. Because to me, if I'm seeing the fact that you have really been able to explain what your business is, then I trust you even more. I trust that company even more because you really care about helping the consumer understand your process, your products, how you take care of your customers, stuff like that. So those would be some interesting options for you for that. Our process page, how we take care of our customers page, stuff like that. I hope that helps. Looks like that's all for questions now. So yeah, why does branding matter? I think I've kind of gone over it a little bit, but to summarize some of that, what it really comes down to is it's really helping you stand out from your competition. I've noticed personally in Eugene, there is a general sense of it's worked in the past, so it's going to work in the future. as far as like how people are branding or how people are not branding their business. Eugene is a very close-knit community, and it's very one-to-one based, very person-to-person based, very referral based. But at the same time, Eugene is growing, and you want to attract people outside of Eugene as well. So it's really important to embrace change and move with it so that you can stand out from your competition. So let's even just say that other people in your competition sect are, or your industry rather, are not embracing change, and they are sticking with how they've worked in the past, and they're moving forward with that in the future. But if you are able to differentiate and have a better aesthetic, have a more consistent offering, and really exemplify how you are different in the market, then you really, by all means, will excel above those other competitive businesses. It really increases the perceived value of your offer too. You know, like imagine if we saw Apple as the key example of like brand consistency. Imagine if we saw Apple using several different kinds of fonts. They weren't using their clean white, gray, black with like bold colors aesthetic. It doesn't convey a level of value, immense value, that people then feel that they can pay, that they want to pay for that to receive that same kind of service for their own uses. Connecting with your prospects emotionally, like I was saying earlier, you really want to understand your people. You want to understand where people are coming from, what their pain points are, and what they're motivated by. Like the car company's example, people aren't motivated by how long the car is or how wide it is, or, you know, sometimes the miles per gallon, sure. But most people are motivated by emotions, and they make decisions based on emotion. And I'm not saying to manipulate that, but you want to understand it. You want to understand where people are coming from so that you can then target who you are approaching much better. It certainly boosts credibility if you have a consistent brand that looks similar across the board on social, on your website, on YouTube, on Yelp, on LinkedIn. If you have credibility in all those spaces, then you're going to stand out in the crowd, and your trust level will increase. And essentially, trust is purchases, or trust is converting people from just casual lookers to purchasers. And also, if you have consistency across the board, you know, when people go to, let's say, look for an HVAC company, they're going to say, oh yeah, I saw that, not consciously say this, but they'll remember that HVAC company because they've seen a consistent brand or a consistent logo across the board in many different places. They're not making those connections intentionally or consciously, but it's the subconsciousness, emotions, and subconsciously directed towards your company. And it really motivates people to buy, to convert people to sales, and a long-term sale too. So you want to have loyalty and retention. So part of that also is the experience. It's not just the logo. It's not just the headline or the tagline. It's the experience that people have with your business, whether it's in your brick and mortar or on the phone with a customer service representative. How are they being treated? You know, if a customer, I had this experience recently actually, where I was buying a cord of wood, firewood. And I know this is sort of like a low-level branding opportunity, but for me, customer service is really important. And this guy said his price was one thing, $230. Then when he got here, he said it was $250. And then on top of that, he shorted me the cord. It wasn't even a full cord. So I'm definitely not going to be buying from him, excuse me, in the future. I'm going to go to someone else. And what that ultimately turns out to be is he was either trying to short me intentionally or not paying enough attention to provide good customer service. So to a larger degree, I really want to emphasize that a brand is not just a logo. It's the full experience of what your customer is getting out of this. Any questions at that point? Doesn't look like any. Okay.
No, we don't have a new question.
Here's some really great resources, and if people would like, I can send these in a PDF later, or put them in the chat window or something. But there's really a ton of great resources out there. And as I had mentioned in the beginning, having $100 million budget for Beats by Dr. Dre is one thing, but like we are small businesses. I don't have that kind of budget. I need to use free resources myself, so that I can be the most effective for my own business. So there's tons of resources out there, from free photos to really high quality illustrations. If you're at all proficient or at least a little experienced with Photoshop and Illustrator, this Vecteezy and Brusheezy are really, really great resources to create assets. This Creative Market, I would highly recommend looking at, because they've got all kinds of stuff, including mock-ups, which are really awesome, which puts sort of real world products, or you can put your brand on real world products. Like, let's say you're a craft brewing company. You can find a bottle and put it in a Photoshop document and put your logo right in there, and it will warp it so that it looks like it's really on the bottle, or like on a billboard or a bus bench or something like that. This defont.com is some really great fonts there. This Behance is a network of creatives who have really great inspiration. You can search by category, by industry, and all kinds of stuff. They got free templates on there as well. The Future is a really, really fantastic resource. I've taken several learning classes from them myself, and their founder, Chris Do is a really super cool guy. They've got really great videos on YouTube, like building a brand series, stuff like that. And then this humans.com is a really cool, even just for fun, really cool resource to put illustrations of humans in different locations and positioning, in case you have, let's say, like an infographic that you want to create about something specific. There's a lot of other resources also, like color resources and other illustration and fonts and photo resources and stuff. But this was sort of like the top level. And I will definitely send this out to people with hyperlinks on them. So I think it's a little early, actually. It's about 10 minutes early here, but I just wanted to wrap up here and see if there's any other questions. Also, like I said, Emerald is a local Eugene-based design agency. I'm the founder and sort of chief head creative. We work with copywriters, photographers, videographers, and I'd like to be a resource for anybody. If they have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My email address is right there, craftedbyemerald@gmail.com. And I'd just like to say, sort of finally, good luck to everyone in this challenging time right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us in this moment to pinpoint what really matters, and what our time will be focused on going forward. And I'd like to say that this too shall pass, and we'll get over this. I know it's going to be challenging and tough for a lot of people, myself included, but creativity and invention is the mother of necessity. So find your passion and find your niche out there, and really what that means is your target market. Who's your target market? Who are you getting at? Actually, it looks like there might be some other questions.
Yeah,
here.
many of the some of the participants asking for the list of resources that you just showed in the slide. So
Here's another one from Scott. Scott Stewart says, what is the number one, number two thing you see when people are branding their new business in a negative way? That's a good question too. What are two things that I see when people are branding their new business in a negative way? Well, I'd say right off the bat, kind of jumping into assuming who you think your target market is. I think a really important piece of building a business and branding more specifically is understanding who you are trying to sell your product to, or who you're trying to convey information to. And there are so many different kinds of businesses out there, obviously. There's nonprofits out there. I work with a lot of nonprofits. And as exemplified in my earlier example organization, they have a logo that looks professional. They have a website that looks professional, but it doesn't serve their greater purpose. And I think part of that was that a lot of times the logo, quote unquote, the logo is seen as the goal for a branding exercise. And that is, by all senses of the word, putting the cart before the horse.
Yes.
You know, even and this is an analogy that can be used for so many things. You know, when you're painting, you want to do a lot of quality prep work. You want to clean your space. You want to tape off your mat. You want to mask off your space. You want to get a good idea of what you're doing. So the preparation is really in a really, really crucial part of understanding who you're targeting, and then ultimately what that logo will look like for who you're targeting.
Yes, I think one of the issues is that they try, like small businesses try to sell everything to everyone, and
Sure.
then it gets like really,
Definitely.
yeah, and that's when it makes things very unclear.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that reflects through all kinds of promotional materials as well.
Absolutely. So that's one thing. I'd say another thing, a second thing that I see in branding new businesses in a negative way. Let's see. I would say.
I think we have one more question.
Trying to scale too fast. I like to use an example of the turtle and the hare, the tortoise and the hare. You know, the hare is really, really fast, and he got really close to the finish line pretty quickly, but slow and steady wins the race. And I know that kind of sounds a little simple for it, but slow growth over time is, I'd say, much better than fast growth that can get out of line in a sort of manner of speaking. I hope that helped.
Okay. Any more questions? Anything? I know some of you requested for the links. I will be arranging them so that you get that to your inboxes. I think most of you provided your email addresses while you register for the webinar. So I'll be sending them to you in that email address. Feel free to ask question if you. I think there is one more question from someone. Oh no, just
You're welcome, Scott. No problem.
Yeah.
Does anybody? I guess we have a little bit of time left here, but and we can sign off if no one has any other questions. But I'd also like to offer up. Does anybody have any specific questions for a business that they're currently trying to start that they're having some challenge with? If not, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for presenting the slides.
Absolutely.
These were very informative and engaging. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And it's really good to see the people in the audience comments, because this is a sign of staying positive and productive, because we have so many
absolutely
things to learn during this lockdown period. So this is the best thing we can do at this time.
And if you can, please work from home. Stay home.
Yeah, I think there is a question from Monet Moran. I have a question as a designer. Please, Monet, just
Okay.
write to us, or I can. Yeah, you can.
Monet, go ahead.
I think she's typing. I don't know. I can see.
Sure. I can't see either, but I would assume she's typing.
Yeah, there.
Have you ever had to design for a fast growing company? Do you have to remind them of their core values? Yeah, a lot of, I mean, that's essentially what a startup is. It's the sort of Silicon Valley ethos is move quickly and break things, which I would agree with 50% of the time, but also the other 50% of the time, I would not agree with that. Yes, I have worked with startups before, and it's been it is incredibly challenging and incredibly rewarding if it all kind of gels together. And what I mean by that is the fast growing company, oftentimes, especially if it's a startup or the founders are very much a part of that growth process. They have, personal emotions and personal feelings towards a lot of times the aesthetic of it. It really takes an immense amount of trust between all the people involved in the fast growing company for it to succeed. Otherwise, you've got people wanting to, micromanage, and they've all got different views of how the company should be run or what the company should be doing. And then again, to that, I would say maybe not so fast, or still let's keep it going fast in a fast growing company, but we need to specify time for establishing what those core values are. And I think part of that is if you establish the core values from the get-go, then go ahead and grow fast. And you can grow maybe even faster by having something to look at as a guideline moving forward. So you don't always have to be constantly changing and creating a new brand guideline or creating a new logo or new assets. If you've got that pre-established North Star, then you can move quickly and efficiently forward and feel really good about it, because you know your core values, you know your lane, so to speak, or your role in the company, and you know that you've got a great brand or brand visuals that can work for the company as the company grows. I hope that helps, Monet. If you are the designer for that company, oftentimes the designer sort of brought in secondhand or secondarily, and they're left to kind of clean up the pieces. And depending on how much control you have, it can be very challenging and you get a lot of pushback or not a lot of receptivity. So I would, in order to convince your superiors, I would, use examples, show them examples of great brand guidelines, and do a little bit of homework and research in order to establish how important a core value, mission statement, and brand guideline is. You can always use the tools at your resource. Don't go into it blind, and you want to always be able to show how important that is. So show it with examples, show it with other companies that have brand guidelines. If this is a fast growing company, let's say in the tech sector, show examples of tech brand guidelines, and oftentimes it's hard for people to kind of visualize things without seeing it. So I hope that helps.
I hope, Monet, you got your answers. And one more thing I wanted to share. I just shared the phone number, our phone number, if you would like to schedule a appointment for a mentoring session. It's there in the chat box. You can also find the phone number on our website and our social media pages, like on Facebook or Instagram. Besides that, you can also ask question to Adam. If you his email address is here, you can also write to us, and we can definitely forward it to Adam. Adam, do you have anything to say? I think we don't have any more questions, and we can now slowly, or we can wait, however you want. But Adam,
No, I think we're, this
yeah.
has been, I think, the full time
Yeah.
now, actually.
Yes. So, but if you have any further question, feel free to write to us. And yes, we have tons of other resources on our website. Do check them out. And if you need any help with the disaster loan by SBA, you can also set an appointment for that. Thank you for joining us today. We wish you all sound health and a thriving business. Good evening. Have a good evening. Yes.
Thank you very much for everyone joining.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye.